There's a story that came out this week that I think is the perfect representation of the concept of institutional capture. It involves someone named Bingo Allison, who has declared that he is the first non-binary priest of the Church of England. It involved splashy photographs of this kind of very large biological man with makeup smeared all over his face, wearing the priest's collar, standing in front of this beautiful backdrop of the church background, standing in front of this beautiful backdrop of one of the churches. And it was represented in all of these splashy newspaper images of this large, hirsute man with kind of cartoon makeup smeared across his face, wearing the priest's collar in front of the backdrop of a beautiful church in England. And the significance of it was twofold. It meant, first of all, that this ideology had now made its way into the Church of England. But second, it was symbolic of a broader pattern of institutional capture. So I want to dig into this. I want you to see what it's all about. So let's give it a listen to this man, Bingo Allison.
And I was studying this part of the Bible, the beginning of the Bible, that talks about how the world was made. And it has this verse in it that says, male and female, God created them. And I just kept coming back to this verse and going, well, there it is. There's my decision. I have to choose between this God who created just male and just female, or my identity that doesn't feel male or female. And in this very dry and dusty academic essay, I felt the presence and love of God. I had to stop, and I had to pray, and I had to sing a bit. And then I did a little bit more of my essay, because it still had to be handed in the next day. And then I maybe had a little bit more of a pray and a sing and a think about it. And I just really felt that God affirmed me in who I was, and that I didn't have to make this choice.
And so there you have it. You have him talking about this process of his gender conversion that is then affirmed by God. And so you go from the more traditional notion of God, who, of course, in Genesis sets the world with male and female. He establishes the natural order, and the human challenge is for us to conform to the natural order created by God. So that is our challenge. We are to affirm kind of God's existence, God's plan. And of course, Bingo Allison turns it exactly on its head. Actually, no. Bingo Allison says, well, I thought about it, I grappled with Genesis, but I've decided that no, I'm neither male nor female. I am a kind of pre-existing, non-binary, a kind of pre-Genesis creation. I know better than what is in the text. And actually, God is here to affirm me. God is here to affirm my gender identity. God is here to affirm the ideology of queer theory. And so, of course, this is an obvious theological problem. But I'd like to talk a bit more about something that is in some ways even more relevant and significant for those of us in public life. It's not only the symbol of, I think, philosophical or theological error, but it's a symbol of practical power and institutional conquest. And so we see in this image, I think it's really the perfect representation of the postmodern gender theory conquering of Western institutions. Again, this man wearing this kind of cartoon exotic dancer makeup smeared across his eyes, wearing the symbol of religious authority with the backdrop of the institution of the Church of England, the foundational church of that regime. And so what is the significance of this? I think it is very clearly a significance of conquest. It is a kind of postmodern conquistador image. You had the great paintings of Cortez, riding into Central America, conquering and then building churches on top of the ruins of the Aztec temples. This is the same thing in a more gentle, a more modern, a more kind of gender-appropriate conquering. But it is a conquering nonetheless. And so you can be upset about it. You can say, well, this person is ridiculous. This person's ideas are completely wrong. This is a travesty, this institutional conquest. But I think there's a more productive question that we should all be thinking about, that we should all be asking ourselves, and we should really be honest with ourselves. The problem is not really bingo Allison. There's going to be people with bad ideas in any society. The problem is that the institution, in this case the Church of England, but more broadly all of our institutions, we're so weak, we're so vulnerable, we're so poorly defended that it allowed these ideas to conquer them seemingly without a fight. And so what is it? What is it about the older ideas, the older expressions of these ideas, that allowed all of these institutions to get run over by critical race theory, by gender ideology, by other left-wing political values? Why were we so unable to defend them? Why were we so unable to present an alternative moral vision that was stronger than those other ideas, that was more capable in advancing interests that were meaningful to people? Ultimately, I think the story of the conquest of the institutions is a story of our own failure as conservatives, as believers in the Western tradition, as people who want to defend the true, the good, and the beautiful against the corruptions of these kind of ideologies, expressed in really fantastical form by someone like Bingo Allison. And so as we look at this, as we maybe even feel outrage about this, I think it's important for us to also summon ourselves to responsibility and to say, you know what? This is our failure. We need to have better ideas. If our ideas failed in the past, we need to re-envision them. We need to breathe new life into them in a way that is meaningful to people, in a way that can create a new defense of the institutions, and in a way that is able to engage in a process of reconquest or reconquering. And that's the task that's before us. It's a very different task than mere criticism. It's a very different task than just exposing these ideas. It's a task for a positive political project, a substitute moral vision for the dominant ideologies that have sacked our institutions. And it's going to require us to think much more deeply, not just about the past, but about the future. And so conservatives cannot really just say, well, we have redoubt, we have consolation in the past that has been destroyed. We actually have to use the past as a form of nourishment, as a form of inspiration, and as a form of kind of a guidebook for creating ideas that can resonate with that eternal, that can resonate with the reality of the natural order, and then can do the difficult, practical political work of retaking the institutions.